We are getting ready to take a ferry across the St. Lawrence River right over there. This is the lineup of cars behind us. We got here 3 hours ago to make sure we had enough time to get on the boat, and we do, and we have an hour to kill, which gives me enough time to talk about A$AP Rocky and explain that situation to all of you. Booyah! All right, A$AP Rocky is an American hip-hop artist. He's in Sweden for a show, I think, and he gets into some sort of physical altercation with somebody outside a burger joint in Stockholm. He and two of his associates, according to the news outlets, I think that means two of his entourage. It's a serious altercation. They beat the guy, kick him when he's on the ground, bottle him apparently, and he gets detained pending a trial. And this is where it hits national news. A$AP Rocky is detained without bail, and he's put into some prison cell in Sweden. And the question is, why is he detained without bail? And the answer is because Sweden doesn't have a bail system. Interesting thing that not many people knew. They don't have a bail system. So if you are arrested on a sufficiently serious charge, you will be put in prison pending your trial with no possibility of bail. Apparently it hasn't existed in Sweden since the late 1700s. And the reason for it, in fact, some people say it sort of equalizes justice, because in other countries you have a lot of pre-trial incarceration, but the people who don't get out on bail typically are the ones who either don't have good lawyers to negotiate good bail terms or don't have the money to post the bail in order to get out pending their trial. So in the US, you have something like 20% who are being held in pre-trial detention because they were not able to post bail. In Sweden, apparently, it's 25% of the prison population which is being held on pre-trial detention because there's no bail and they have their trial. Once they have their trial, they are either incarcerated or liberated, and depending on how much time they have served for their pre-trial detention, they'll have their sentences reduced. So this hits the national stage because people now realize that Sweden has no bail system. So this hip-hop artist who's very famous in the States is now being held in jail with no possibility of being let out pending his trial because of the nature of the crime. Gets involved Donald Trump, who starts tweeting at Sweden, we should release him, etc., etc. Shorten the story. He gets to trial about 3 weeks to 4 weeks later, and it's a 3 or 4 day trial, and he's released after his trial. Now, first thing first, the fact that he was able to have a trial so quickly after being arrested, he was arrested something in July 3rd and has his trial on, I think it was early August. It's interesting. I mean, that goes to show you how fast the system works in Sweden. In the US, despite the fact that they have a bail system where in theory you can get out if you can post bail, people are held in jail for months, sometimes years, before they can have a trial. And now, admittedly, some of the time served can count towards their sentence, but there's a problem in a system, in theory, where people don't have the means to post bail to get out, and you have sort of a two-tier legal system, whereas you seem to have a problem in the Sweden system as well, because there's no bail, period. So rich or poor, you're not getting out if you commit a crime of a certain nature. If you commit an alleged crime of a certain nature that the Swedish authorities think you need to be put in pretrial detention pending your trial. He gets out after his trial and is released to the US. And some people are asking, how is that possible that he's let out before he's been sentenced? Because apparently the sentence is supposed to be handed down on August 14th, whereas the trial just ended a couple of days ago. And the theory is that someone is released from prison when there's a strong indication that they're not going to serve any additional time or any time whatsoever. Bearing in mind, A$AP Rocky has already served a month in pretrial detention, so if the judge seems to be thinking that the sentence is going to be a month or less or no sentences at all, that's an indication as to why they let A$AP Rocky go. Or maybe it might have been some political pressure coming from the US government, although a lot of people say that Swedish judicial system is not susceptible of that type of influence or pressure, and that it's a standalone system. Again, things that can never be proven nor disproven. Some might say that when the president of the most powerful nation on earth starts tweeting and takes an interest in it, maybe there'd be some sort of pressure to release the pre-detained accused sooner than later. So he's been released, which is a good indication that he's either going to serve no time at all or less than what he's already served in pretrial detention. Another interesting thing that I discovered while reading this is that in the Swedish system, you can have a criminal and a civil trial for the same infraction, sort of like the O.J. Simpson type thing, where you can prosecute someone criminally for a crime and regardless of what happens in the criminal prosecution, there can be a civil trial because the burden of proof is different in the criminal versus the civil system. Criminal is proving the accusations beyond a reasonable doubt. Civilly is balance of probabilities. So someone can get acquitted criminally, but still get convicted civilly, a la O.J. Simpson. In Sweden, there is a way of coupling those two processes together in one and the same trial, and apparently that is what the alleged victim in the A$AP Rocky case did. He asked to couple the criminal and civil prosecution into one and the same trial. The reason for this is that it would reduce his costs in terms of prosecuting civilly for the same infraction. Now, apparently, the problem with this is that the civil case is going to have to follow the result in the criminal case when they are paired together. So while you get the benefit of not necessarily having to assume the costs of the civil lawsuit, the prosecutor for the criminal case will prosecute the civil case at the same time. The problem is you are bound by one and the same result for the criminal trial. So if there's an acquittal on the criminal trial, chances are there's going to be an acquittal on the civil trial as well, because the Swedish system doesn't want to have a problem where one and the same process results in two separate outcomes. Now, the victim or the alleged victim is free to choose a civil trial separately on his own, irrespective of what happens in the criminal, but he would have to assume those costs himself. So sometimes people don't want to do that because it's more cost effective to couple both trials together, do them at the same time, and live with the outcome in both the criminal and civil case. The other thing, what did I learn about this case? Oh yeah, the alleged victim is suing civilly coupled with the criminal trial. He's suing for $15,000. He's suing A$AP Rocky for what by all accounts was a very aggressive and violent assault, resulting in stitches, broken ribs, etc., setting aside the instigation, which we'll get into in a second. But he is suing A$AP Rocky in Sweden civilly for $15,000. Now, what do you think that lawsuit would be in the United States, setting aside whether or not it gets thrown out because of defenses of instigation or, bringing out the outcome yourself? The lawsuit in the United States would probably not be for $15,000 in damages. Another interesting thing that I found out in this case is that there is no trial by jury in Sweden except for certain very specific issues of freedom of the press. So this is going to be a trial by a judge, but there's a word for these judges. They're sort of like ordinary judges. They're not exactly the same types of judges that you have in the United States. They're sort of educated people or trained judges of the layperson. Lay judges. I think that's what it's called. Lay judges. So no trial by jury, trial by a lay judge, coupling the civil and the criminal together at the same time. Oh, now that is a lot of information to digest on this A$AP Rocky, but I think that answers a lot of the questions that people had and that they may or may not have known at the beginning of this, because when he was incarcerated on no bail and not allowed to be released pending his trial, a lot of very popular, powerful people in the United States took interest in the Swedish system, and a lot of people overseas had no idea about the Swedish system. So I think that answers pretty much the broadest and the highest overview issues of the A$AP Rocky. We are getting ready to get on that ferry to cross this beautiful calm water right now. If you like this video and you like my content, you know what to do. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, drop a comment in the comments section, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Boom. All right, 3 things I forgot to clarify. A$AP Rocky, the S is spelled with a $sign just because. A lot of people were asking whether or not instigation or the fact that the guy who got assaulted started the fight is going to play a factor in the conviction or the sentencing, and the obvious question is yes, but to what degree? Someone starting a fight doesn't necessarily mean that it can turn into a 3-on-1 and justify as self-defense the next level to which the aggression was stepped up. So we'll see, but that brings us to the third question as to what happens if A$AP Rocky is convicted to more time than he has already spent in pretrial detention. Then the question is going to be, now that he's back in the US, is Sweden going to extradite him or make an extradition request? And if they do, is he going to listen to the extradition request? Because the US and Sweden have extradition treaties, but the question is going to be whether or not A$AP Rocky is going to come back from the US to go to Sweden to serve more time if convicted to more than the 1 month that he was already spending in pretrial detention. All right, that really ends the video this time. This is the ferry now from Saint-Simeon to Rivière-du-Loup, and we're almost there, but enjoy the view